Alright guys, so today we're going to be looking at multiplying numbers using our place value chart. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to start with 3 circles, 3 units in our place value chart in the ones place. So here, of course, we have 3 ones. Now, if we wanted to multiply that 3 ones times 10, what would we do? What would we do with these units right here? What would we do with these units in the place value chart in order to multiply them by 10? If you remember how we use our place value chart, I want you to answer that question. What do we do with these 3 circles in order to multiply them by 10? Alright, so hopefully you determined that we would move them over into the tens place, right? You would move these guys over into the tens place, and then you would have, and now you can see that we have 3 tens. And the number that 3 tens is equal to is what? Alright, so hopefully you've determined that this would be equal to 3 tens, which would be 30. And the next thing I want you to think about is, what if we then take these 3 tens and multiply them by 10 again? So of course we're going to move them over into the hundreds place now. Sorry, my circles are not perfect. So now we have 3 hundreds. So what we did was we said, okay, now we have 3 tens times 10 equals 3 hundreds. I'm just going to abbreviate that a little bit. All right, so now what I want you to think about, is, what are you really multiplying to get 3 ones and change them to 3 hundreds? So you're doing 3 ones times something equals 3 hundreds. Now what we did before was 3 ones times 10 equals 3 tens, and then 3 tens times 10 equals 3 hundreds. But there's a much faster way of doing that, and it's actually quite simple if you really look at it carefully. 3 ones times what is going to give you 3 hundreds? Well, of course, that's going to be 100. Because what we can do is we can just do, instead of doing times 10 and then times 10 again, we can just go all the way from the ones straight to the hundreds place. Okay? And then we will now have our 3 hundreds. There. Now what I'm going to ask you is, how can we solve, I want you to show me, or think about rather, the 2 different ways that we could show 3 ones times 1,000. Okay? 3 ones times 1,000. I want you to think about the 2 different ways that we could show that. What that would be something like this. We start with our 3 ones over here. And we're wanting to do that times 1,000. Now, we can think of it as doing 10 times 10, which would give us 3 tens. And then times 10 again, which would give us 3 hundreds. And then times 10 again, which would finally get us to 3,000s. Or we can simply think of it as 3 ones times 1,000 gets us all the way over here to 3,000s. Okay, you can think of it either way. Alright guys, so the next problem we're going to look at is 15 times 10. Okay, so we know that we're trying to multiply 15 times 10. So how would we represent the number 15 in our place value chart? How are we going to represent that? I want you to answer that question in the answer boxes. How many ones, how many tens, how many hundreds, etc. to represent the number 15? All right, so hopefully you've determined that we would have 5 ones and 1 10 to represent the number 15. So in order to multiply this number by 10, what we would need to do is we would need to multiply all the discs in the ones place by 10 by moving all of those over into the tens place, moving all of the discs in the tens place, which is just 1, moving them over to the hundreds place to multiply them by 10. Okay, so now we have 1 disc in the hundreds place, 5 discs in the tens place, and 0 discs left in the ones place. So to represent that down here, we would have 1 in the hundreds place, 5 in the tens place, and 0 in the ones place. So what we've just done is we've multiplied 15 times 10, our original problem here, and we've gotten 150 as our answer. Okay, so, all right guys, so the next thing we're going to think about is multiplying the number 22 times 100. So the first thing you need to do to multiply a number like this is simply to represent the 22 in the place value chart. So I'm going to put 2 ones, because I have 2 ones here, and then I'm going to put 2 tens as well, because I have 2 tens in this number. So I've represented the number 22 in my place value chart, and now I'm going to go over and multiply by 100. Now, as you saw in the last problem, there's 2 ways that we can do this. We can either multiply each of these pieces by 10 and then multiply each one by 10 again, so that we're multiplying by a total of 100, or we can go ahead and move them over 2 places each to multiply by 100. So I'll show you both ways. So first of all, I'm going to move each one over just 1 place to start with. So now I've multiplied, and now I've multiplied, at this point, 22 times 10 is what I've shown you right here. This is 22 times 10. But what I need is 22 times 100. So I'm not done yet. I would need to do this again. I would need to take my 2 discs from each spot, move them over 1 more time. So what I'm finally going to end up with is 2 discs in the thousands place, 2 discs in the hundreds place, nothing in the tens place or the ones place. So my final answer would be 2,200. Okay? And just a quick little trick, if you're confused about this, all you have to really know is a 100 has 2 zeros. We added 2 zeros to the number. That's really all we did. So that's just a quick little trick. All right. So as I said, I'll show you the other way to do this if we wanted to just jump immediately from 22 over and multiply each part by 100. So what I would just do is, instead of only going over 1 spot like I would to multiply by 10, I would go all the way over to 2 spots over. And I would do that with each one. And I would still, of course, end up with the same answer of 2,200 or 2,200. Alright, so as you can probably guess, you won't always have easy numbers like something times 10 or something like 100, something times 100 to multiply. Sometimes you have more complicated numbers. So we're going to look at how to multiply 4 times 20 on our place value chart. So what we're doing here is we're going to start with 4 ones, but we have an issue here because we can't do times 20 the same way that we could just move over into the tens place. We have to do something a little bit different. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to figure out what we can break this 20 into to get tens, okay? Because we have to figure out how to get tens or 100s or 1000s to work with. We can't work with a 20. So what we're going to do is we are going to change this 20 to a 2 and a 10. So instead of thinking of it as 4 times 20, you can think of it as 4 times 2 times 10, because as you know, 2 times 10 is obviously the same thing as 20. So instead of multiplying 4 times 20, now we're multiplying 4 times 2 times 10. So what we can do first is we can just multiply 4 times 2. So that's 8. So I'm going to go ahead and express 8 ones here. And so now I'm done with this part. Now I just have to multiply what I have here by 10. So now I can just move over into the tens place. So now I can just grab my 8 ones, move them over, put them in the tens place, and that's it. Because now I've multiplied the entire equation. So now I have 8 in the tens place, 0 in the ones place, and that leaves me with 80 as my answer. So the last thing that we'll look at is the number or the problem 6 times 400. Okay, so as we've talked about before, we can't multiply by 400 automatically. We have to figure out how to break this 400 down into 100 or 10 times something. So since this is 400 and not 40, it's probably going to be best to break it into 100 times something. So I'm going to go ahead and represent my 6 ones here. And then I need to figure out what I'm going to break this 400 into so that I have a 100 that I can work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that 400 to 4 times 100. So instead of working with a 400, now I have a 4 and a 100 that I can work with. So just like with the other problem, what I'll do first is I'll multiply 6 times 4 first, leaving just the 100 to deal with. So to multiply 6 times 4, I'm going to go ahead and represent 24 ones, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 24 ones here in the ones place, because 6 times 4 is 24. Now, the thing is, I can't leave 24 in the ones place, can I? So before I do anything else, I need to take 20 of these. Here, let me change to a different color so you can see. I need to take 20 of these ones, and I need to change them to how many tens? How many? So I'll say, what your question is, 20 ones is how many tens? All right, so hopefully you figured out that 20 ones is going to be 2 tens, and then we still have 4 ones remaining right here. Okay? So now we get to multiply by 100, because that's all we have left to do. So we've got our 24 put in here nicely, and now we need to put multiply each by 100. So we can either move them over one space at a time and do like this. This would be times 10, and then times 10 again to get to a total of times 100. And do the same with these over here. But I just think that's a little sloppy, because it just kind of makes it harder to keep track of everything when you do it that way. So I just like to cross out, when I've moved something over, so that I know, and I should do it here too, so that I know that it's no longer in that place. So this will give us our answer. This will give us a 2 in the thousands place, a 4 in the hundreds place, and then zeros and zeros here. So this will give us our correct answer of 2,400. But another way that we can do it that I think is a little neater and faster is by doing this. So I've still left our 24 here, but what we need to do this time is instead of just moving one place at a time, we're going to move 2 places at a time. So we're going to take these two 10s right here, and we're going to move them all the way to the thousands over here. We're going to move them over 2 spaces in order to multiply by 1,000. And we're going to do the same thing with these 4 1s right here. We're going to move them all the way over to the hundreds place right away. And that's the same as multiplying by 100. So that's still going to give us our 2,400. And that is our final answer.